future match and see how they do. David Rood, part of that Canadian group. We were talking about this yesterday with Flake up in the Hairy Tarantula area is the name of their store. It's a little shout out for D Rood and his store. Putting up some of the biggest results from one single store in the entire world, especially in North America's area. I talk about this might be one of the hardest ProQuest areas to play in the entire world. So here we go. We got a great start. A little 3 elemental reveal for the Bravo player, David Rood on your left here. Rocking that Montreal Expos hat. I gotta love the old school.
Old school, love it.
Little block from Bounding Demigon here. Going to cycle a couple cards on him, but some damage is definitely going to get through over to Cody Williams here. Taking a look at the equipment, nothing really surprising here. You do have those Null Room boots that you want to at least point out a little bit here, because while Chain's not like it used to be with the amount of Arcane that it does, it still does a little bit. Plus you see, the Rosetta Thorn in play here. You see the Grasp of the Arcanine, so that definitely could come up. Looks like we're going to have a Winter's Wail attack here. It's going to be blocked for 2 cards from hand, so not a bad first turn for David. Anytime you can get forward momentum, get some damage done, and an arsenal, that's got to feel like a win.
No, look, so much of the first turn is just about setup in most instances. So if you find a way to push through any damage whatsoever, that's huge when you're on the play, and a full 6 from D-Rood there has to love that start.
Yeah, I've always had this question. If you're Starvo in like some of these matchups and you don't have the Starvo ability in turn 1, like if you don't have the 3 elements, are you attacking quite differently?
I would say yes. Almost always. I mean, you have to evaluate whether there's actual benefit from your attack, because your opponent does have potential benefit. They can just go ahead and filter their hand, set up exactly what they want.
Speaking about setups here, we've got a Captain's Call. Looks like it's going to be a +2. Then we have a Soul Shackle made by Chainer that's going to give the next attack Go Again here. So this is a Vexing Malice that's going to have Go Again. It's going to deal Arcane when it's attacking, and it's attacking for, I believe, 4 here. It looks like a blue Vexing Malice to me.
I think your read is right on that Vexing Malice. Like we mentioned, haven't seen a lot of Chain. Chain is like go wide with extra steps.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's a little more complicated. It's going to kind of play like Viscerai in a way. So like you're going to have some very simple turns for the first couple turns, and then when that Soul Shackle gets up to 4 or 5, you're not going to have like the big pop-off turn to try to do 40, but the turn's going to get very complicated. There's going to be 6 or 7 cards on the chain because cards are going to be cast from exile. Some of these Blood Debt cards that are going to do damage at the end of the turn instead are going to be castable, and you're going to see Chain do some really crazy stuff.
Yeah, of course, those Soul Shackles double function, right? They give your next Runeblade attack Go Again, but also loading up that Banish Zone, which Chain is very, very comfortable playing out of many, many cards with Blood Debt ready to go. And it just reaches this end state where you're essentially playing with a 7 or 8 card hand, and you have to end the game because you're running out of cards in your deck, but you have a huge advantage in those final turns.
Yeah, you usually have access to 7, 8 cards, like you were saying. You know what? It's time for Shield Check. Here, yeah, Brian, we talk about this all the time.
This is the slam dunk choice, Stan. And you run
Absolutely.
Rampart every single time because it's so common for chains to break the combat chain.
And why is that important in this matchup?
Because as soon as you pay to Rampart of the Ram's Head, that bonus lasts throughout of the turn. If the combat chain breaks, then the equipment returns to its resting place, per se, and you have the opportunity to use it again later in the turn. So if you pitch 3 resources early, use one of those resources to maybe activate your Crown of Seeds and one to activate Rampart of the Ram's Head, put the Rampart of the Ram's Head in front of something, block. Combat chain gets broken. The next time Rampart is used, you can go ahead and sink a second resource into it and block 2 with the Rampart of the Ram's Head. That's tremendous value from your offhand in this matchup.
Yeah, you might even, one of those crazy turns that we were alluding to, with 6, 7 cards and chain, there's a chance you might see it block a third time.
It happens. It really does.
All right, so both players down to 34. Back over to D-Rood here. He's going to get a Channel Lake Frigid in play, and this looks like a cold Winter's Wail attack with a on-hit of a Frostbite.
Yeah, so Disruption is the name of the game for the Bravo side here. You're trying to make Chain's turns as awkward as possible. And Chain is a high variance hero. Whether you draw a blue in your hand is a big deal. What you hit off of your Soul Shackles is a big deal. All these points of variance get extremely complicated by any sort of disruption you can provide. So if you're taking cards from hand, if you're making things more expensive, that's exactly what you want to do on the Bravo side of the matchup.
100% agree. This Winter Wail's going to get through for 4, get a Frostbite over onto Cody Williams. And you're talking about that variance here. Chain is a really cool deck because it gets to run one of the cards that we talked about a little bit yesterday that used to be probably one of the most played cards in the game as a generic, and it's kind of fallen down a little bit, and that's Art of War. And this is a deck that really, really takes advantage of Art of War, so look for that later in this game. Any of the Art of War turns from Cody Williams are going to look very, very good.
Yeah, just think about how well Chain uses all the pieces of this card. You banish your attack action card, which has Blood Debt, so you get to play it anyway. You load up with 2 more cards, and when you're going super wide, those +1s, if you're making 5 or 6 attacks in a turn, getting 6 damage out of this card on top of it is just a preposterous set of outputs.
Yeah, you're generally paying 1 resource and drawing 3 cards and dealing 3 to 5 extra damage in turn. And that's pretty absurd for 1 card in Flesh and Blood.
Absolutely. One of the biggest draws to Chain is just how good Art of War is for you.
Now, this is a big one here. This is a card that we haven't seen as much, but it's starting to make its way back in Chain. That's an Eclipse that's getting pitched. It's very important that it goes to the bottom of the deck early.
Yeah, you want to save Eclipse for the late game. It's extremely powerful once you've amassed all those cards with Blood Debt. Ursur, the Soul Reaper token. I don't know if we're going to get to see one here, but it's essentially a weird thing in Flesh and Blood. It's like a standalone creature that just sits on the battlefield and pressures your opponent. Also allows you access to more filtration, so just a huge, huge swing if you're ever able to make that Ursur token.
Now, something way more difficult to do with no Seeds of Agony, since we don't have that card anymore. Usually it was like a lot easier to do that kind of thing, but Tarek Patel was talking about this earlier. He's like, it's not as impossible as it may seem, especially if the games go a little bit longer. Now, this does look like this is an Unhallowed Rites attacking for 5 with Go again from a Shadow Puppetry here this turn. So big attacks from both these players. I was going to say at the beginning of this match, strap in, there's not going to be a ton of blocking done in this matchup until someone's dead.
I think it's going to be a very aggressive matchup from both sides. If there is a defender, it's certainly the Bravo side. But if Bravo is able to spike some early fuse turns, able just out of nowhere hit with on-hit effects, something like Spinal Crush is tremendous in this matchup to prevent Chain from doing any go-again shenanigans. Even Crippling Crush, just, again, challenging resources for Chain is what the game is all about on the Bravo side. And if you're able to mix it with offense because you're routinely fusing from the Bravo, you're in a really good spot as the Bravo player.
Yeah, and you see one of those cards that's going to mess with those resources, like you're saying. We see a Channel Lake Frigid here on Dave's side, making everything that little extra cost, so it's going to slow Cody Williams down a little bit. It's not as much of a hindrance on, say, the second Soul Shackle turn. You're looking to maybe have one, about like 4th, 5th turn?
Yeah, that's about the sweet spot where you'll get maximum value out of the Channel Lake Frigid. But still, you want to go into those later turns where Chain is at its highest effectiveness with as high a life total as possible. Otherwise, that can just blow you out of the water and leave you, you can commit your entire hand to defense and still be taking just massive amounts of damage.
Yeah, you're looking for the turns that are involving those Art of Wars. We talked about, huge Enlightened Strikes. Some of those game-defining generics that we've seen, they're still played in this Chain deck, and they still do huge, huge things. All right, on hit here, he is going to get to opt 1, so he's going to see. It looks like he likes the card, so he's going to keep it.
Yeah, generally, you're only going to go ahead and do the banish if you hit something with Blood Debt or it's something that doesn't really play with your next set of turns, so that is going to stay on top from the Shadow Puppetry. Plenty of go again, but the resource management really coming in huge for D-Rood there. Not much of a turn from Cody Williams, despite having some pretty nice pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. But he's going to set up an arsenal here. He's going to get 4 cards in his hand. So if that Channel Lake Frigid doesn't stay around, and let's be honest, it's a little harder to keep it around the second time around, then he's going to have a 5-card hand. Oh, here we go. It's a big start of a turn from D-Rood. That is 2. Obviously, we got a full reveal from the Starvo there. I think that was 2 different pulses in his hand that I caught there.
Yeah, that bodes well for subsequent turns if you're able to hold on to some of that.
Oh, boy. Here comes a big attack. Here's that Crippling Crush you're talking about. 2 resources from hand, 1 from the Spring Tunic, and this is one that, if it hits, can really mess up this next turn that Cody Williams was kind of setting up last turn.
Yeah, look, if the Bravo fuses and you're dealing with Autumn's Touch or you're dealing with Evergreen, these sort of soft hits where they don't really carry any on-hit effect, you'll just take that as Chain because you can match their output as far as pure damage goes. If it's Crippling Crush or Spinal Crush, these things are really problematic on hits. You're not going to be able to generate the type of offense you're looking for in the early game, and your life total is going to come under immediate threat.
Speaking of life totals coming under threat, D-Rood did get a little update for us there. Thanks, buddy. I was going to say, I think he took that damage last turn. We hadn't gotten it updated on the screen just yet, so we're at 29-30. This game, I think their life totals are going to stay pretty close together until these big turns like this one that we're seeing from D-Rood here. So it looks like we're going to get our first block from an equipment. It looks like I was about to say we're going to have an unmovable from the Arsenal. Very big setup from Cody Williams here. So that's going to be 8 from the Arsenal, 2 from the Grasp.
Yeah, it's tremendous timing for the unmovable, but look how many resources had to be used to go ahead and get that to do anything. It's kind of the same thing, except without the life loss. So it's better, for sure, but you've given up a lot of your aggression if you're Cody.
And yeah, this is kind of Honestly, this is actually not a bad turn from Cody here. He didn't have to use his Husk just yet. That's a really, really important card in this matchup.
Great point.
Getting around the Crippling Crush here and not getting utterly destroyed by this card, but also keeping that Carrion Husk around because you want to be able to stop the big attacks like this Crippling Crush or the other ones that you were mentioning.
No, I'm so glad you mentioned Carrion Husk because it's one of the best reasons to be playing Chain. Maybe the best standalone equipment in the game. It certainly has that reputation.
It is,
I mean, block 6 from your equipment, just absolutely absurd.
Ooh, that's a bad banish here from Cody. He does get one Blood Debt card in the Bounding Demigod, but that's an Artivore. And this is one of the ones every time I'm playing against Chain and I watch them banish their cards, anytime I see an Artivore,
it's a little fist bump.
I get a little grin. Yeah,
yep.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Looks like another Mavian Skies here into a Bounding Demigod. Let's see just how wide Cody's going to go this turn. I think there's go again here as well. Yep.
I don't think very wide because the Mauve Skies would have already given the Demigon go again, but chose to make the Soul Shackle as well. And that tells me we're just not going to get a big output here. I'm assuming that last card in Cody's hand is going to go to Arsenal.
All right, we'll have to see. Does D-Rood want to do anything here? Let's see if David wants to activate that Crown of Seeds. He's been looking at his arsenal a little bit here. It's funny. This is, I think, the longest I've gone into some Starvo decks without Crown of Seeds being very active so far.
Yeah, interesting start to the game for sure.
But this is kind of what we expected, right? Haymaker after Haymaker from these two players. These are two of the most aggressively tinted decks in the game right now. We're trying to do as much damage as possible every turn.
Yeah, and if you're watching Cody's deck and you're not familiar with Chain, you're saying, these turns seem pretty anemic. There's really not a lot going on from Cody.
Oh, just wait.
That's going to change. Yeah. I mean, much like Viscerai, the game can turn on a dime. If those Soul Shackles reveal a bunch of cards with Blood Debt, you're going to see what this Chain deck can actually do.
All right, it does look like we're going to activate the Crown of Seeds of Blink going into the resource zone. It's going to draw a card up to D-Rood's hand here. Doing the twofold thing here. We talk a lot about how good Crown of Seeds is here. That's going to put a prevention shield up to D-Rood. It's going to allow him to block with the Rampart's Head as well if that leftover resource. Plus, it does some filtering in his hand. What else do you want this card to do? Because it does it all.
And I lost a grand total of 1 match this ProQuest season. Now, I didn't play that many ProQuests, and I drew another. So I missed top 8 in my event. But one of the losses I took, the only loss I took, was the Chain as Starvo. I played Bastion in the matchup. I think if I just played Rampart of the Ram's Head instead, I win very easily.
I think you and I both this week have talked about how much we loved Bastion, and we're starting to slowly creep back to maybe 50-50 or even more into the Rampart's Heads. That might be the way to go in a few more matchups. And
I still want the Bastion. I still want the Bastion around for certain matchups. It's such a huge tool against something like Briar, should you ever face it. But you really have to pick your spots very carefully with it.
Now there is a Briar player lurking at this exact record. They're 7-1 in the tournament as well, so we might see that come up later in this event. I think we might try to be getting them on coverage again here, maybe as soon as the next round. I do have a soft spot for all the Runeblade heroes.
They're actually in our backup feature match right now.
Ooh,
so if we have time,
we
have time, we will get to a Viscerai versus Briar matchup. We'll see if we can get through this match in time to present that to you.
Frostbite given over here to Cody Williams. Looks like he took that whale, and David's just going to have a little bit of a slower turn here, but maybe a good setup turn for himself here. He's going to put that arsenal there. He's going to have a card left over in his hand. He's going to draw 3. The Tunic only at 1 here. What you're really looking for here are the turns from David to either reveal to Starvo or any of the turns where he has Tunic at 3 plus Crown of Seeds. Those are going to be the big turns. And here we go. This is the first
double Blood Debt turn here.
It's the first one we're revealing. So that Captain's Call is just going to go away. That one's not going to have anything here. But you're seeing this is kind of a double usage. I like the way that Chain players do it. These cards are technically not on the board.
Correct.
They're in the banish zone, but since they're castable from the banish zone, since they can be played from the banish zone, it kind of just helps out your opponent. Hey, these cards are playable. Also, it helps you remember, if they're there at the end of my turn, I'm going to take Blood Debt from them. I'll take a damage for every one of these that's still there.
Oh,
but
we have a turn developing here, Tannen. Let's see what the banish is here, if it's going to take 2 more cards into hand. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Representing +1. Going to go ahead and banish another card with Blood Debt. It's another Unhallowed Rites.
Yeah, it looks like we've got 2 Unhallowed Rites and a Riftbind.
I think they're all red too, Tannen.
Oh, that's scary. Riftbind was the one that used to be, when Chain had Seeds of Agony, that was the card that you were scared of. You were scared of the 9,
absolutely.
10, 11 power Riftbinds. Still a really good card. We may see a powerful return from it, but it's definitely come down a little bit in its power level since that. I think I got a glimpse of the arsenal as well. I think it's another unmovable. Okay. I might be wrong. It was quick.
That's a strong setup. Just going to go ahead and pitch a blue here, get some resources going from the Chain side.
Now, this is a Howl from Beyond. This is the kind of card that took the spot of Seeds of Agony as like your non-attack action that we're going to play more copies of this turn. This is going to pump up the next well. I believe that's a red one, so the next attack should have +3 here. We're going to go ahead and cast one of these or play one of these Unhallowed Rites from Banish here. I think it's going to be pumped up by 4 here, so it should be attacking for what, 8? Yeah, that's what I'd say. Try to keep up with Chain, by the way, can get very difficult.
Yeah, so the key thing here for Cody Williams has to find a way to go ahead and get go again enough times to use all these cards with Blood Debt. And your deck is very well set up to do that. Things like Art of War, things like Lead the Charge. You find ways to do it. It's just sometimes you put together all the Blood Debt cards with Chain and you can't find the go again. And we talked about being a high variance deck. That's part of the wheel you're spinning with Chain.
It's a lot like the Briar deck that we've seen, too. There's a lot of moving parts, and when they work together, boy, is it good. Now,
explosive output.
Yeah, since that Unhallowed Rites had a non-attack action play before, one of them got to be put to the bottom of the deck. So the Howl from Beyond, maybe it comes back. Stacking the bottom of your deck, really, really important.
Absolutely.
Chain. That Eclipse is hanging around down at the bottom. We've got a lot of these non-attack actions that are going to pump because there's a very good chance that this game goes another 4 or 5 turns. We get to the bottom of that deck because that Soul Shackle is like drawing extra hands every turn. So you're getting down 8, 9, 10 cards a turn into your deck.
Yeah, once this triggers on the next turn, we'll have already put 10 cards from the deck into the Banish Zone. Also, you filter through your cards pretty quickly. You don't really save. You generally draw 4 every turn.
I like to say that Chain is actually the most important pitch stacking deck in the game. You will almost always get to the bottom.
I agree with that. I mean, especially in the Chain-dominated metagame, it was so critical how you set up your second cycle of the deck. It was everything in some matchups. All you were trying to do was set up your second cycle.
Now, D-Root's going to take some time here because this is the first really, really big turn from Cody. And what's he kind of thinking about here? Is he setting up for his next turn and this one as well?
That's always the dance in Flesh and Blood, right? You're trying to figure out how much of this output can you stop from your opponent while still coming back with some kind of answer. And it looks like step 1 is going to be an activation of this Crown of Seeds. I wouldn't be surprised if Rampart of the Ram's Head also gets in the mix, should Cody have to break the chain again. You know, Cody was smart in using that Soul Shackle early. That was a big part of preventing the chain from breaking.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I've noticed that Cody's been very quick at using the chain ability and making that Soul Shackle early in the turn. Because for everybody at home, if you're not played with chain, whenever you activate the hero ability, the chain closes, and like you were saying, that Rampart's going to go back to, what was he called, his resting place?
Yeah, I don't know what else to call it, really. I mean, the equipment zone, does that work? Offhand?
Sure. We'll figure something. You know what, look. At the Tan and Grace on Twitter, give me a good name for where the equipment goes back when it's done for the turn, where it rests for the turn. But, so what we're seeing here is the chain is still open, so that Rampart is blocking, and so now it cannot be used for this Riftbind. So the Rampart did absorb a little bit of that damage, but we're at 23-23 here as far as I know, and this Riftbind's coming in for another 5.
Yeah, solid turn from Cody. I'm going to make a rule for us, Tannen. If we're talking about the combat chain, when chain is around, we have to say combat chain.
Okay, I'm going to get better about that. Okay.
I did it too. I didn't think of it. But when you're just saying chain all the time, it could definitely get confusing. Mm-hmm. Very important that chain, the hero, effectively manages the combat chain.
And I know they recently had some kind of rule change and terminology change. What exactly, are they calling this the stack now too as well?
Yes, that has changed with 2.0. Flesh and Blood's rules getting a little cleaner, a little bit easier to understand, all part of the game evolving and really coming into its own as we hit, this era of competitive play for Flesh and Blood.
So maybe we need to start updating our own terminology here that might make it better, especially when Chain is one of the heroes in the game. All right, D-Root down to 18, taking a big turn here from Cody Williams. Cody Williams with that card in arsenal. It looked like it was an unmovable. If not, there is one in his hand, it looks like here as well.
A little bit of Blood Debt damage, too, for Cody for the first time. Obviously, if you do not play those cards from the Banish Zone, you are going to take Blood Debt damage, an important part of the equation with Chain.
Now, talking about that Blood Debt, I think it's pretty important that Cody blocks with his Carrion Husk soon, right?
Absolutely. Given the size of this break ground, I assume this is going to be the spot where we see the Carrion Husk block. You lose access to it once you hit 13 or less life. The Carrion Husk will banish itself. The trick is with Carrion Husk, as soon as you do block with it, it's going to be banished. And it has Blood Debt. So it will sit in your zone. It will slowly deplete your life total. So finding the exact perfect spot to use your Carrion Husk is a very, very skill-intensive part of playing Chain. It seems like this is a good window for it, but maybe Cody just trying to get a little bit more of a look, trying to prevent some really important on-hit effects, because, again, this is clean damage from Break Ground, not carrying any on-hit effect with it. You really would love to use that Carrion Husk to blunt something like a Spinal Crush, like a Crippling Crush.
Really, really good points. I like to ask myself, is this Huskable?
Yeah.
On all the attacks. This is one I want to give my Husk up. Now, if he does have those D-reacts like I think I saw here, that's something that he can go that way instead.
Great point.
We'll have to see if Cody wants to do that because, like you said, there might be a turn where he doesn't have a defensive reaction, and if David has one of those big attacks, a Spinal Crush, a Crippling Crush, an Oaken Old, you don't want to block with cards from hand if you can avoid it. And here comes that unmovable
That's what
from
we're
Arsenal.
seeing, the unmovable block. Going to try and hold on to that Carrion Husk a little bit longer, and I like it.
I want to point out, David kind of had the nod on his head there. David's a really savvy player. So is Cody, by the way. Cody's been around a bunch of the highest level of Fleshable. I've seen him a bunch of events put up some really good results. But David, you see him get that nod? That Arsenal's been there for multiple turns.
Yeah, it's what you expect at that point.
You're like, yeah, of course that's an unmovable the way this plays. Looks like we got a block from hand with a Demigod, and plus the Grasp of the Arcanite's going to go down. No more blocking from Grasp. It does get to stay around, keeps using ability. But it doesn't look like a lot of damage or anything's going to get through this turn.
Yeah.
And we're going into turn 5 of Soul Shackling here for Cody. He's going to get 4 here at the beginning of his turn, but...
Tick, 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 tick. That's just what you feel when you're playing against those Soul Shackles. You know more and more output is coming every single turn. How's the lottery going to go for Cody this go-around?
Oh, I like the kind of slow roll. Ooh, an Invert Existence here and a Howl from Beyond.
Okay, couple good hits there.
We're cooking with some gas here this turn.
Yeah, we'll see what Cody can put together. Again, key piece is going to be just getting go again onto these attacks, finding the resources to use them. That's always a huge part of the equation. Like I said, you're kind of incentivized to play a lot of reds as Chain. You want to go ahead and maximize your damage output. But with Cody without many cards in hand, it's going to be really tough to leverage the Spanish Zone.
Yeah, he did start this turn out by making a Soul Shackle, and let's see, like you said, he had to block it with from his hand, pay a bunch of resources. This might just be another setup turn and taking a little bit of blood debt, but you can't like that if you're Cody.
Yeah, you want to get some output here for sure. So do you have enough to fire off one of these attacks? Do you have to just Arsenal and be content with it?
I think we moved to Arsenal here, so it looks like...
It does seem to be the case. D-Rood already activating that Crown of Seeds, looking to filter the hand a little bit.
Yeah, it does look like we got Arsenal. Blood Debt 3 is going to happen over to Cody. He's going to go down to 19. Is this the opening that David needed?
Look, as Cody, you can live with that, because if you're taking Blood Debt damage, that means on your next turn you have more resources. You have more things to do. So it's not a disaster. And if you Arsenal something like one of your high-powered offensive cards, something like Art of War, per se, you can really set up a tremendous turn at that point.
Now, speaking of setting up tremendous turns, we got once kind of building up here for Cody. If, a huge turn doesn't come from D-Root, then he's going to have a lot of those cards left over, like you were saying. D-Root really incentivized to have a big turn here, but he's also got a good chance to set up a big one next turn because this Tunic just went up to 3. No Arsenal card yet, but I'm pretty positive he's going to be trying to Arsenal card as hard as possible this turn.
No, I think you're exactly right. Trying to do that 5-card hand setup that we talked about is maybe the most powerful combination of equipment in the game. If Carrion Husk is the best standalone equipment, Crown of Seeds plus Tunic, best combination of equipment.
I'm glad you brought that up because I really wish we got this matchup a little bit more often, because it's like we've got in a vacuum, the most powerful equipment, and then we've got together, this is the best thing you could be doing with equipment in the game with Crown of Seeds and Spring Tunic. So I like to see this fight happening because it's like number 1 versus 1A, going at it. So
I love this matchup in general. I think
it's great.
I think Chain in particular, now that it has come back in power level to the rest of the field, is such a fun deck to both play against, to watch, all the above. It's just this tremendous, tremendous combination of interesting hero abilities, timing, and when you see a master of the Chain archetype, it's really something special. They get so much output from their deck.
I think we could put Cody in that camp as well. I've
Absolutely.
seen him play this deck really well and for a long time. And it does look like we have just kind of a slowish turn from David, unless there's a blink behind this. But it does look like we're attacking just with a hammer here. It is a cold 4, so at least it's threatening a frostbite on hit. Cody's deck, if you don't use Husk or if you don't use that Skull Cap, doesn't block for 4 very well.
Yeah, it's interesting here. So you got to talk about Carrion Husk value all the time. It's a very, very important consideration for this Chain deck, and you want to use it in a big spot. D-Root knows that, though, and wants to present fewer options to really maximize that piece of equipment. And speaking of maximizing equipment, the Arcanite Skull Cap here is going to block for 1, but not getting that 2 block from a lower life total, which can be really critical to dictating the outcome of matches.
Oh, absolutely, and it's good that you pointed this out, because here's the thing. Cody at 19, that was 4 damage, so right down to 15-ish, but he's got 3 cards for blood debt right now. Plus, he's going to be, turning over 5 more here.
Yep.
If he turns over a bunch, he might not be able to get all of the blood debt of his turn. You don't want to go to 13.
Absolutely right. You have to be able to get go again onto these actions to clear out a lot of the blood debt. That also helps Shadow of Ursa. That can get go again. And now we have a big banish zone for Cody. I believe a 3-card hand and an arsenal. So we could see some serious output here.
All right, buckle in. I got to say, this might be one of the turns where Cody really needs to turn up the heat, and if he does, this game's going to get very difficult for David Rood. But he's in a good setup too. He got that arsenal card, he's got 4 cards in his hand, he's got that tunic.
Yeah,
so,
both players reaching full power at approximately the same moment.
Yeah, this is what we came to see here today.
You see Cody thinking very carefully. These turns get so complicated as the chain player. You have to get all of your activations, your timings, your management of the combat chain. You want to do it precisely to maximize your damage output.
If you like puzzles in your card games, if you like the really complicated piece-by-piece decks, this is the deck for you.
I agree.
You can't go wrong with the Runeblade heroes if you want that. They're all a little complicated. So it looks like we're going to have a Riftbind for 3. Now it does have Go again. Chain was active. 6th Soul Shield gets activated. So there won't be any shenanigans, most likely, of Rampart's head this turn. But I do like D-Root here. He's going to go ahead and take a look at that Spellbound Creepers because this could also get a little mixy this turn. This is what makes this deck so good. It can attack from so many different angles. You were kind of talking about this. It uses like everything, every zone.
Yeah.
Every card, every equipment is so impactful.
And Tannen, if I'm going to call Carrion Husk the best standalone equipment, I think we're looking at the second best standalone equipment right now in Spellbound Creepers. This is just so versatile of a tool. We mentioned how important it is for Chain to be able to instill Go again on its attack actions. You do it with Spellbound Creepers, and you read this card that may not be obvious to you how it works as a new player, but what you want to do is
It's not obvious to me.
Okay, I got you, Tannen, don't worry. What you want to do is you turn on your Spellbound Creepers, you use it to play one of your non-attack actions at instant speed. If you play a non-attack action at instant speed, it doesn't consume an action point, but if that non-attack action has Go again, then you get your action point back. And you use that to continue your attacks over time. It's a really beautiful, fluid interaction. If you're able to put out some arcane damage, close the combat chain out with something like a Rosetta Thorn to get in for 2, you get to keep your Spellbound Creepers around for multiple turns, and that's another key piece of the equation with this chain deck. When do you use this equipment? Both Spellbound Creepers and Carrion Husk have limited uses. You have to manage this so perfectly to get the best from Chain.
Let's talk a minute about that art, too. They are absolutely gorgeous. One of my favorite parts about this game, I actually just love the art in this game. These cards are gorgeous. I want to get gold equipment so bad, but my bank account really, really isn't happy about it.
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to crack a cold foil Spellbound Creepers.
So lucky.
One of the prize pieces of my Flesh and Blood collection, for sure.
So I'm not a big foil guy myself, but when it comes to equipment and heroes, I'm all for it, especially the cold foils.
I love it. The fact that heroes don't get shuffled in, they stay separate from the game, and you see how they're often displayed in these beautiful cases. It really feels like a justified investment to go ahead and have the nicest version of all of these cards.
Why not show off a little bit?
Yeah.
Customize my deck the way I want to.
I lean so hard into the aesthetics of the games I'm playing. If it makes me happy to see these beautiful versions of these cards, I'm going to go for it.
It makes me happy that you're happy, Brian.
Okay.
All right, we got a block for Rampart's head here on the Riftbind. Looks like I got a block for 1, and here we go. This is what you were talking about. Take it away.
Time. Yep, we're going to activate that Spellbound Creepers. Going to use that to play Howl from Beyond. That is a non-attack action, and it will instill Go again and let us continue the combat chain.
Yep, that action point refreshed here. Looks like this is going to be I think they only have red Howl from Beyond, but I need to check here.
Yeah, Howl from Beyond, both instilling the Go again and amplifying this next attack. So Cody going to go ahead, find out where the most pain can be inflicted on D-Root. It looks like it's going to be a red Unhallowed Rites. That's going to get the benefit from that Howl from Beyond. Has Go again. Cody's going to be able to come back with more.
Yeah, it looks like we're keeping track of action points here. Looks like we're down to 1 here, and this is going to be a hard turn for David to get out of with cards left in his hand.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And thank you for pointing that out, Tannen. Already had an action point available, so that action point will just stockpile and sitting there ready to go for a Chain to make another attack.
Yeah, this Unhallowed Rites coming in for 7. And
this whole turn has been timed so perfectly from Cody Williams to deny access to that Rampart of the Ram's Head. It's just a masterful display of how you're supposed to do it with Chain.
Let's see, D-Rood taking his time, and you don't blame him here. I think he's trying to piece together. What's he trying to piece together here? Trying to figure out if he can even have a card left over at the end of this turn?
Yeah, well, I mean, what's the maximum output from Cody? What's the max pain Cody can inflict? How can I possibly clap back? Because here's the problem. Cody's next turn also going to be really good. Those Soul Shackles are just piling up now. Still has the Carrion Husk available to answer any clapback, so there's so many options available for Cody. And D-Rood knows that, I mean, the pressure is on at this point. You have to find a way to slow down this onslaught because it's only going to get worse from here.
These are the turns that make calling winning players.
Absolutely.
These are the turns that get you to Pro Tours. These are the turns that are extremely, extremely difficult. But if you can stay calm, collected in it, and play as best as you can here, find that little narrow window, then that gives you so many extra points in winning these games. These turns are immensely complicated. It looks like I think he might have just taken the 7.
I think you're right, and we'll make sure those life totals get updated down there.
Look at this Rosetta Thorn. Definitely going to be for 2 and 2. I think we've satisfied both ends of this multiple times this turn.
Yep, and that means those Spellbound Creepers are going to be able to stick around.
Looks like the Crater Fist is going to jump in front and stop the 2 physical, but that 2 arcane might have gotten through. I think we still have some resources floating, so maybe those boots stopped one of the 2.
Could be one prevention for sure, but there's still more to come.
And
now
we're
it's time
done.
for Invert Existence.
Yeah, we are definitely not done. So it looks like Invert Existence is going to remove a card from D-Rood's, a couple cards from D-Rood's graveyard here. It looks like we're going to prevent one of those 2 arcane. D-Rood down to 8, but here's the important part, Greg. I'm sorry. I have Craig on my mind from not being here this morning. Craig,
Look,
we love you.
We all miss
Brian.
Craig. I understand.
David's still got a couple cards left in his hand after this turn.
Yeah, it made it through with a surprising amount of resources given how aggressive Cody has come. But look at that life total. That's the resource that you can't get back. It's never coming back to you, barring some shenanigans like Tome of Feyendel, which isn't present in this list. So D-Rood has to absolutely use those cards left in hand to put some pressure on Cody. And you see D-Rood reading that Carrion Husk. It's going to be tough because any kind of big attack that D-Rood wants to put forth, that Carrion Husk is ready to jump in front of it.
Yeah, one Blood Dead going to come over. That Shadow Verser still peeking around here, so that's still set up for next turn.
Yeah, and that's a good piece to have around for your next turn because if you end up with a card with Blood Debt in hand, that could move it to your Banish Zone and extend your turn.
So right now, Cody has 4 cards in, but he actually has 6, right? He has his Arsenal plus the Blood Debt card.
Yep.
And then we don't know how many more he's going to get. I'm going to say at least 2 or 3 probably from the Soul Shackles. Now, this is the turn that D-Rood need to start, and this is why he kept cards in his hand. You see the Starvo activation.
Yeah, found a fusion, but unfortunately the swing, not the most threatening. It's just going to be a blue Autumn's Touch, and now Cody says, it's Carrion Husk time. I agree, Cody. You don't need to check in with me. I know you know what you're doing, but going to go ahead and soak up 6 of that damage with the Carrion Husk.
I'll say, you think it's a blue? I'm not sure. I'm hoping. I can't tell from here, but it does look like we're going to attack from the Autumn's Touch. Maybe a little bit of damage through. We're not sure we'll get the life totals updated as quickly as possible, but it looks like we're going to have a cold 4 coming behind here. D-Rood left 1 card left over to put in that arsenal. He's going to be pretty incentivized to arsenal every turn for the rest of the game.
Man, I was so sure that was a blue when I first saw it, and now you've made me doubt myself, Tannen. It's possible it's larger than that. We'll make sure it gets sorted out.
I'm not even sure, so... It looks blue to you, it looks red to me. We'll call it a yellow.
Sure, yeah, we'll split the difference. Either way, it was time for Carrion Husk, and Cody was ready to cash that in. Now has to decide how he wants to answer this Winner's Wail, and it looks like just going to go ahead and soak that up, taking 4 from the Winner's Wail.
Yeah, going down to that 13 number, so now you see why the Carrion Husk in here. Really good dance from Cody this game, and keeping that Carrion Husk around to the last possible minute. So
perfectly managed. I mean, it's 13. It's time for the Carrion Husk to do its thing, and it has done so.
And because it's going to do damage to him for the rest of this game as well. That is Blood Death that he cannot get banished. You cannot get away from the Banish Zone, so that's going to get him every turn. So here's the 6 cards.
Big 6 from these Soul Shackles.
You can see D-Rood's like, oh boy, how bad's it going to be? Oh, we got
1, 2, 3. Okay, 3 cards added. That's pretty decent on Cody's side.
50-50 is actually pretty good for Chain nowadays. It used to be a little bit better when we had the 9 copies of Seeds of Agony in the deck, but nowadays, if you can get a 50-50 on your 5, 6, 7 turns, you're cooking with some gas.
Yeah, and also, let's not forget about that Shadow Averser sitting in the Banish Zone. That could further extend the number of cards that Cody has access to, as well as a way to add Go Again to your interaction and get nice and wide.
Cody's sitting in a really, really good spot here. He's got a couple blues in his hands. I think we might see 4 or 5 attacks this turn.
Yeah, and there you see, I believe, a blue Minnowism. Going to go ahead and fuel stuff, pay off that Frostbite, get the Howl from Beyond going.
Yeah, next attack's going to be +3, and we're just going to keep doing what we've been doing all game. It looks like we're going to plus the Shackle very early, make sure that we get something Go Again. So whatever attack here is going to have Go Again. It looks like it's going to be the Bounding Demagon from Banish Zone. This is attacking for 7.
Yep. Bounty Demigod, 0 resources. Nice free play there from Cody.
And here's the really hard spot for David, right, for the next couple turns, is he's pretty much all these attacks, he's in check now.
I agree with that, and the squeeze is just going to get worse as time goes on. I also want to note, as far as I know, based on what I've seen played, what I've seen banished, 1 Art of War left in the deck. If that Art of War comes up on a turn when the Banishment is just loaded up, that's the game breaker right there. That'll be too much for David to bear. And like we said, the damage output only gets bigger and bigger over time for this chain deck.
I'm going to go a step further. I think if Art of War gets played in this game, the game's over. I think it's just game winning.
I mostly agree with you, Tan. It would take an absolute miracle to come back from that point. So we'll see if Cody's fortunate with the banishes. Maybe already has it. Who knows?
David in a tough spot here because he's got to walk that tightrope that you've been talking about. How much can I manage? How much can I take and still come back with present a threat? Because it'll probably be pretty easy for David to get through this turn, spending all of his cards, blocking, activating Crown, activating Boots, and he could take a very small amount of damage this turn. But if he doesn't have any cards left over, then he's not presenting a threat, and he's going to be in a worse spot next turn when the 7th Shackle hits.
Yeah, that's the thing about Flesh and Blood is if you commit a lot to your defense, then that means your opponent gets a little bit more offense because they don't have to answer your defense. It's this beautiful dance of back and forth, figuring out exactly where you want to spend your resources. And it occurs every single game you play, which makes Flesh and Blood games so fascinating. Always.
On the surface, it looks so easy. It attacks for this, it blocks for this, or it pitches, right? One of 3 things, and it couldn't be further from the truth of how much depth there is in this game, and in every set that keeps coming out adds more and more.
Yep.
So it looks like we've got a block for 4 here, 3 coming through to David, so David's going to drop down to 5 here. What a game so far.
Yeah. And you see the tension in both players' actions. I mean, 7-1 out of calling. We've got 3 more rounds after this. If you're 8-1 with 3 rounds to go, you're in prime striking position for that top 8. So much on the line as we get close to Pro Tour 1.
Yeah, 10 wins probably going to be good enough to get the players in one of those top 8 coveted spots. So getting a win here makes the rest of your day pretty easy. Or you can start to see the end in sight.
Here's a belittle from Cody Williams. First belittle we've seen. It is not going to have its supercharged mode, not going to be able to go find a Minnowism to go with it.
Yeah, some people talk about this as the best card or the best combo in the game. It's not going to happen here this turn. Belittle attacking for 3 here with Go again. A nice little combo that kind of built into it here. You could actually, with Belittle, you can reveal a card, go get a Minnowism out of your deck. Generally, a red one and a blue one are played in the decks. I'd have to check the deck's deck list just to see exactly, because you go get a red one to kind of pump up an attack if that's what you need, pump up the jam this turn, or if you need a couple extra resources, you can get that blue one and add it to your hand and pitch it for 3 more.
Yeah, Cody has both, as you would expect. There's 2 copies of the blue, 3 copies of the red. Obviously, we don't know exactly which configuration, but if those belittles are there, I expect there are options. Just means it didn't have the low-cost attack in hand to reveal to it. Because that is, again, I mean, there's so many ways for this chain deck to get absurd output. Belittle is a good step in doing so. I also want to point out here, Cody just banking those Shadows of Ursur, not trying to cash them in for small bits of damage, trying to find a spot where you get a key Blood Debt card out of your hand and into the Banish Zone with Shadow.
Really good turn of blocking here from David. This looks like this Rosetta Thorn is coming in from 2-2 while David's at 5. He saved his seeds for this, an instance of 2 Arcane, because he had some resources left over. So he's going to activate the seeds, and he's going to activate the Northern Boots to take away that 2 Arcane damage from the Rosetta Thorn. Now he could block the physical damage he wants. Looks like he's thinking about, yep, it looks like Crater Fist is not long for this world. So it looks like we're going to get 1 block from Crater Fist. So 1 physical damage going to come over. David doing a very good job here of blocking, keeping his life total above board, and still keeping some cards in hand, but we're not done yet.
Yeah, look at this follow-up. It's Movsky's time. That means at least 1 more attack coming. Finally, it's going to be Shadow of Ursur. Yep, cashed in. Do we have a card in hand? I don't believe we do at this point.
I think that's the arsenal. It might have been that other unmovable from earlier.
Yep. So no go again on the Shadow, just trying to force through a little bit more damage, get as wide as possible, make D-Rood as uncomfortable as possible.
So these are the tough turns as well here when you see some of the better players start to really figure out the best blocking, where you might actually see the Tunic start coming out very soon, because it does have a point of defense, and it has a counter on it, but Or am I going to get those next 2 turns? Am I going to even use the Tunic this game?
Yeah, and Shadow actually had go again from the Mauve Skies, so that is going to go ahead and let the last Shadow come out, just cashing him in now. Again, getting as wide as possible, making D-Rood as uncomfortable as possible. And we know next turn, 7 Soul Shackles going to come down.
Yeah, and I love the way that this has been branched out. He's going to go ahead and attack in a way that huge attack, then of a nice attack in the middle that's, it's only for 2, but it's 2 and 2, right?
Yep.
It's 2 different ways. Now the small attacks are coming in, but piece after piece once the block 1s are gone. So, yeah, if you want to give me the last card in your hand, you're going to be over-blocking now at this point. So you could have actually gained more life by blocking one of the big attacks early, but you don't know the full range of what's going to happen this turn. That's the kind of squeeze this deck pulls you in, and this is the turn that we were talking about earlier. You're going to see 6, 7, 8 cards on the stack from Chain here, and it's going to be very difficult for D-Rood. You could see the pressure is getting to him here, hands on head, only a few cards here.
I mean, look, playing against a master of Chain like Cody is very different from playing against someone who's just getting familiarized with the deck. Cody is squeezing every single ounce of value out of this deck. You notice the combat chain never broke in there, used Mauve Skies off the Spellbound Creepers to go ahead and instill more action points and get that go again, so no chance for D-Rood to get a double block from Rampart. I mean, like, given how good Cody has played, I might actually be back on the Stalagmite side for this matchup because Cody hasn't left any windows for that Rampart to get extra value.
Now, while I do kind of agree with you here, I will say this. I do think Cody has made a conscious effort in this game to make the Rampart as unimpactful as it possibly can be.
I agree with you, but it also doesn't seem like it's impacting his output that much.
I agree.
Just doing a great job of accounting for it.
All right, here we go. 7 cards.
Big 7.
Lucky number 7.
Starting with Bounding Demigon.
This is good. Oh, wow, there goes the last Artivore, but we got the first 5 cards, had Blood Debt, so an extra 5 cards practically added to Cody's hand this turn. If there's any blues in here, it's going to be a miracle if David can make it out of this turn.
Yeah, so interesting cards hit here. One thing I want to point out, Ghostly Visit, one of the cards. That's not a Runeblade card, meaning Chain is not able to give that go again. So that's going to be a really big thing as this turn wears on. You certainly want to use those Ghostly Visits, but you're going to have a hard time using both of them now that the Spellbound Creepers are gone. So it's going to be on Cody to craft this turn. I'm sure Cody's going to nail it, do it perfectly. Let's see exactly how he wants to shape the turn here.
Going up to Shackle 8, so next thing is going to have go again. Looks like we're going to our hand here. All right, we're going to pitch that Tome of Fiendal. It does look like that Ghostly Visit is attacking.
Okay. Now this is interesting. Either I'm mistaken in my remembrance of Chain, or there's something else giving go again. It may be that Seeping Shadows instilling go again in the Ghostly Visit. Yeah, there you go. You see the next attack action card you play with cost 2 or less this turn gets +1 and go again.
That artwork is haunting.
Yeah, a beautiful piece of art. Ghostly Visit is going to get go again there, and that means that Chain ability still sitting around to give the next Runeblade attack go again. That's going to be clutch for that Bounding Demigon or those Rift Binds sitting ready to go.
Just Cody squeezing out, even in this turn, squeezing out that little piece of just extra oomph from his deck by taking that Soul Shackle early. It broke the chain, but we haven't started to attack yet, so no extra block from the Rampart's head this turn. I think it's so important that we point out how well Cody has done that in this game, has managed that Rampart's head, because, like you said, that card, probably one of the most impactful cards in this matchup.
I agree entirely, Tenon.
All right, D, we're going to start with pitching for some resources here. Looks like we've got a blue. Looks like we're going to have that Rampart's head getting activated first. D-Rood at 2, so this, I was going to say, we're going to need another card from hand here as well. All right, so it's going to be the Seeds activation here. So this is technically attacking for 3. We've got a shield for 1 floating around.
So much pressure when you're at these low life totals. We keep talking about Kodachi game states, and Katsu gets to claim it by virtue of being one of the first heroes, setting your opponent in that spot where all these small attacks, they have to be answered. You can't let anything seep through at this point, and it's so punishing. It just means every single attack asks you for a card.
Yep. Now that attack gets fully blocked out again. Now here comes a Bounding Demigon. That's going to be 3 with go again.
Yep. All these attacks representing lethal for David Rood.
Yeah, I don't know if David's going to be able to make it out of this turn. We're going to see. If he does, he's definitely not going to have any resources left over.
Yeah, and I mean, it only gets worse. Again, 8 Soul Shackles on the next turn. So how do you turn the corner if you're D-Rood? And Cody Williams, honestly, 12, comfortable life total.
Yeah, I think the only way that David was going to get out of this, or one of the best ways for him to get out of this, was he needed Cody to have a big whiff on one of his Soul Shackle turns. Like maybe one card out of the 5 or 6. It's going to be hard to miss here now, though. With 7 or 8 happening every turn, even just 2 cards getting turned over is going to be good enough, most likely.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think that D-Rood's in a very precarious position right now. I think Cody has played this game masterfully to set up this spot. And I just don't know what's left for D-Rood. And you see, like, reaching for that Tunic, there's going to be a point where that's going to have to be cashed in as a defensive card. That means you're not getting those huge output turns. So it's all kind of unraveling here for D-Rood.
Yeah, it does look like it's going to be a block with the Tunic as well.
Yeah, Breakground only has 2 defense value, so you want to line up 3 and not leave yourself at 1, given you only have the 1 instance of Arcane Barrier with the Null Ruin Boots.
He does have that resource floating around just because, and that is a Soul Reaping.
Soul Reaping from hand. Yeah, D-Rood going to take a moment, read that.
We're going to read it as well at home. Now, this one has almost no text here at this point because of the fact there's no cards in the Soul, but it is just a giant attack.
Yeah, big 6 coming through from Cody here. Also looks like this is probably going to be it for the turn. I'm assuming this does not have go again. Not really seeing any way to instill it at this point. And that means the next turn is going to start with a Riftbind and Ghostly Visit ready to go. Cody saying, I can afford to take some Blood Debt damage here to put out a little bit more offense, because that means it's just going to take cards from D-Rood's hand. He doesn't have any option. He has to block here.
Yeah, if there's no D-React, the highest blocking value in David Rood's deck is 3. So him reaching for resources here, I was supposed to say this has to be a defensive reaction, right? Well, maybe not. He's going to take it back into his hand. I think David, what he's saying here is like, I don't know if I can get out of this, but like he's going to try. I mean, because here's the thing. Cody's putting himself too where like he's putting himself where he can't lose, because I think one of the ways he loses here is if he does everything, David gets out of it. Yeah, that's going to be too much.
Just gets the fist bump from David Rood, and that means Cody Williams on chain, moving on to